Hello, everyone. Thanks for checking out the Indy Handshake Wrestling Podcast. My name is Paul Ponte. I am joined today by Kenny K. How are we doing today?
Doing well. How about yourself?
Doing pretty good. There's only thing that's safer than an Indy Handshake is an Indy Handshake over Zoom. How are we doing today?
Well, I'll give you the pinky.
There you go. My favorite thing, the Indy Handshake, and thus the name of the podcast. Kenny, you've been wrestling here in the NorCal scene for a while now. You took a little bit of a break, but then you came back strong, wrestling multiple promotions. But let's go back to the beginning. Let's talk about how you got started in watching wrestling, and really importantly, how you learned what independent wrestling was.
All right. I guess I started to get into wrestling when I was in fifth grade, I would say, probably around fifth grade. I remember very distinctly going to a toy store or something like that, and seeing those foam belts on the walls hanging there, and remembering that I was mocking that why would anybody buy these things, and why would anybody care about any of this crap? And then it's probably a couple months later, I had friends that were into wrestling, and then that's how I got into it. Specifically, one of my closer friends when I was in fifth grade, we were really into wrestling, and he was into WWF, and then he kind of introduced me into WCW, and that's what I ended up mainly watching. But he was a big Mankind fan, so we were so naturally he would encourage wrestling during recess. So that's kind of how it started rolling as far as doing it. Even back then in fifth grade, we would just go, back out in the field, and we would, fake moves or whatever that kids did back then and still probably do now. And as far as going forward from there, it just kind of grew, obviously. And then once you realize that landing on the ground hurts too much, then you start to kind of move on to some other form of mat or pad or whatever. But our group of friends grew. So I had a trampoline in my backyard, and I was always on the trampoline when I was younger. So I figured that was a natural way to go. So we formed a backyard wrestling federation, like any other kid would do, called ETW, Extreme Trampoline Wrestling. Yeah.
Very nice. And then, so where did you get started training at, and how did you discover, that there was this whole other world in wrestling besides the mainstream?
So training came very, very later. So, it depends on what you mean by training, I guess, if you mean informal training or professional training, because informally, we got to a point where we had the trampoline, then we got older, then we got heavier from the trampoline, then we moved to my other friend's backyard who had mattresses because, they were a lot more supportive than a trampoline and springs. And then we realized that was kind of dirty, and we were getting older. And so we invested in a training ring. So that's where I actually learned most of my initial wrestling skills and bumping and whatnot, just watching and practicing on this training ring that we all pitched in on and put together, because we were putting on a local access TV show that I was editing. And we wanted to move away from mattresses and look more professional. So that's how we got the ring. So from there, our group of friends grew because we were on like local access TV. So people started knowing the backyard and where we were at. So they would come by and watch or ask questions or whatever. And then our group of friends grew from there. So my buddy Travis, who actually knew Rick Luxury and the Suburban Commandos and Chupacabra and all those guys back then, he introduced me to all of them at the time, and that was Brawl Wrestling currently at the time. And that's how I got kind of involved in professional wrestling, because I figured, hey, if I got a professional ring here, I might as well kind of start transitioning into the real thing. If I'm already, stepping my foot in there, might as well learn how to do it correctly, and then eventually go on to work in front of people and an actual audience.
What was the first stumbling block or first shock of when you started doing it a little bit more professionally? Did you think, oh, there's also this part of it that I never thought of before? Like, what were those moments?
I would say that the physical aspect is always going to be the main shock, I would say. Just but I think I crossed that hurdle just because we had the ring and we kind of had a lot of time to play around in it anyway. But I would say that maybe the training that leads up to it, Heat Night, the initiation into the wrestling world is something that was something that I didn't know about. And as far as later on, I think it's all pretty self-explanatory. I mean, you're an independent contractor, you're in it for yourself, you get what you put in.
How about like stuff like wrestling psychology or like locker room
okay,
etiquette?
yeah, that's a good one. So, I mean, I could tell you right out of the bat that I didn't know how to put together a match till probably, till I started back up again. Really put together a match correctly and with thought, rather than just going in there, which is what I previously did when I was younger, and just go, oh, I like this move, I like this move, I want to do that, I want to do this, and I want to do that, rather than working it in a constructive way that makes sense throughout the match.
It's like when you're creating a wrestler on a video game and you're like, one of my basic moves is a diamond cutter. The second,
yeah. I mean, even to make it simpler, if you're putting together a custom character and your character is something very specific, he's supposed to be yourself, but now you're putting a banana helmet on him and gloves, like Freddy Krueger gloves or something else. Like it's got to be cohesive and make sense. And it's the same thing with a wrestling match. You can't just throw it's. I say this all the time. I mean, that's kind of why I stick to backbreakers and the spine, because it creates the psychology for me. I don't have to work too hard about it, and that's my go-to and expertise. That's what I know how to do. And regardless of people who may know my moves or know how to scout my moves or know ways around them or know that I'm going to go for their back, because that's I'm not hiding it. I have multiple other ways of getting around it or moving around it. So I welcome the attempt at trying to get around me, trying to kill your back. You know what I mean? So that's the fun thing.
It creates a story in itself. Is that like, now you're wondering, how is this person going to try to dodge these back attacks? Then how is he going to end up getting around and getting to it anyway?
Exactly. Yeah. And a lot of times these days, what I see is generally people are wrestlers, but they don't have a direction as far as their match goes. So that you'll see a lot of cool stuff in the match, and maybe it makes a little bit of sense, but then they'll finish it with a frog splash or a super kick or, something so insignificant to when they were maybe super kicking their head off or DDTing their face, and then they do a submission on the ankle. That's the kind of stuff. Like I get the out of nowhere aspect of it sometimes, but that's what is happening, I think, a lot now, is where there's no real consistency anymore.
Yeah, I mean, when I interviewed Luke Hawks, and Luke Hawks is a pretty good friend of mine, and he even says, he goes, I used to do like 450 splashes and like all this stuff, and he's like, and I can still do those. He's like, but that's not my style anymore, so I don't do them. Yeah. And like, because he's transitioned to obviously now he's jacked to the gills. So like to him, he's like, I'm like a power guy who's like, I'm no Flash. I'm like, Mister, I'm going to beat the shit out of you. So because of that, it doesn't make sense for him to pull out a move that everyone will go, oh, to, because he's like, that's not his character. That's not who he is. So, there's certain things like that where sometimes wrestlers do moves that you're kind of like, I don't know if that makes you a heel or a face, depending on the kind of move you do. Like if I see a face and he rakes someone's eyes, I'm kind of like, should you be raking someone's eyes? I mean, I don't know.
I draw a fine line between heel and face. Like the philosophy I have on heel and face is that you're a heel or face to the opponent, not to the crowd. I mean, as far as me goes, as an independent wrestler who makes money off of merchandise and very little money off of, whatever they pay me to wrestle, I generally try to heel or face whatever the opponent I have in the ring. How that is perceived by the audience and how they take that in and like it or dislike it, I could care less. You know what I mean? It's up to them how they want to digest it. But I am this character.
Yeah. It's funny because, I listen to a lot of old school wrestling podcasts like Arn Anderson's and stuff like that, where they talk about like, oh yeah, back in the day, heels just didn't sell merchandise. You just didn't, because nobody would buy it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
they also got paid a premium.
Yeah, exactly. and now it's a different story, like after matches, pretty much at any promotion, you get to meet and greet the wrestlers and buy merch from no matter heel or face, everyone's out there because hey, you gotta make money. Like
Right.
plain and simple.
Yeah.
I mean, you gotta think about it's kind of bad to be like, well, you're a heel, so you shouldn't go out there and sell stuff back in the day. And you're like, well, be kind of nice if, they could pay for their gas home. But
Yeah. Yeah. And even that, it's why shouldn't they be able to? I mean, people buy Darth Vader merchandise.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't, are we supposed to not buy any Darth Vader merchandise because he's some sort of genocidal killer?
Yeah.
Still got a cool mask though.
Yeah, literally Boba Fett's one of the biggest selling merchandise things ever, and he's literally
he didn't do anything.
He didn't do anything. he Mr. Magoo'd himself into a pit, and that's what happened. So
Yeah.
Oh man. So what about the other stuff, such as like locker room etiquette and like, a lot of, especially when you're dealing in wrestling, you're going to deal with multiple age groups of people, especially in the indie scene. You'll be wrestling people that are in their 50s all the way down to someone who's 17 years old and he's just starting. So
yeah.
There's a lot of stuff about locker room etiquette and what's proper and saying hi to everyone, all that stuff. What was your experience like with that? And then what was like the learning curve?
So my experience, like I said, so I was pretty indoctrinated in the wrestling world through friends and stuff like that. As far as the etiquette goes, I mean, when I was starting and I was training, most of my trainers and people I wrestled with were in the older age group. There wasn't really that many young people. I think the people that were around my age at the time, Wise Guy, people like that. That's like, man, that's all I can remember really at the time. That's still around. So they were all in the older age group, and I like to think of myself as a pretty respectable person to begin with. So I'm generally, I try to introduce myself to everybody. That was new for me because I was shy when I was younger. So going up to each individual person and sometimes intimidating people and saying, hey, and also not going in and interrupting their conversation, or they're getting dressed, or they're having a drink, or whatever the hell else they're doing that, you could be pissing them off with, because that's generally what ends up happening with the wrestling world, where when you start growing up in the wrestling world, you get this walking on eggshells kind of feeling a lot of times, because you don't know what's right or what's wrong. And so you're very fidgety, and it comes across and you can see it, that's why you can be called green or whatever. So my trainer, mostly Pogo the Clown, Joe Applebaumer, coach, big guy, pretty intimidating. So I didn't really have a lot of issues other than, once I was trained by him and all those guys there, nobody else really intimidated me that much, or, worried me that much. And they taught me locker room etiquette really well, in the sense that, you need to be respectful of the veterans in the locker room. You need to close your mouth. You need to listen, and you need, regardless of what the information they say, just take it, receive the information. You don't have to go, well, I was trying to do this, or that happens all the time, where somebody comes and tells you something, or you tell them something, and they're like, well, I was, and I thought this, and it's like, just listen, take it in, and take it for what you will. And that was probably one of the biggest learning curves, I think, for me as a younger kid too, because you have that ego where you're like, I'm gonna do whatever the hell I want, I can do everything, but just being able to understand that you take the information in, listen to it, whether or not you use that information later is up to you, but just receive the information, because somebody that's telling you that information has had years of experience and knows a lot more than probably you do. And regardless of if that was on the local independent scene or the way higher independent scene, they're going to know things that you don't know. I learn new stuff all the time, and that's one of the beautiful things about professional wrestling. There's so much stuff to always learn.
Yeah. And knowing about, if there's someone that's going to straighten you out, Applebaumer is one of those people. Yeah, I love that guy. He could be intense for sure.
Yeah. So he was one of them, but I don't know if you remember DJ Riz back from then. He was probably the one that straightened me out the most. So, you think Applebaumer was, one there, but that was just one of the pillars of straightening out. So I would say from DJ Riz, I learned a lot. I learned more of the fight back. Don't let people just take advantage of you. that's probably the biggest learning curve as far as, being able to pull it off and doing it in the ring and getting it, a certain way, because it can only be taught some certain ways. You can only tell somebody, hey, don't let somebody take advantage of you for so long, but if you go to training and some dude keeps beating the crap out of you for 20 minutes over and over, and you're like, what the fuck? What am I doing wrong?
Yeah.
All he wants to do is want you to fight back.
And did that happen in a real match situation at all? Ever?
Oh yeah, all the time. Yeah.
And what's your go-to receipt move?
I don't know if I have a go-to receipt move. I generally try to go with whatever makes sense. If the person, go-to receipt move is probably a kick. I have a Taekwondo background, so it's some sort of kick.
There you go. Yeah.
A good example is this is a good story. I love this guy. I love this guy, but I had a cauliflower ear, and I got surgery on it, so I got stitches, and I taped it up to keep wrestling. I made it pointed out, right? I was very specific. I think it was about 5 or 6 times in after it was grabbed, yanked, whatever, that I kicked him so hard in the shoulder that his arm went so limp that he thought he broke it or something. So it's just one of those things. And that wasn't something I normally do. I don't really believe in receipts all that much. Well,
I think there's a difference between like a general, like, he fucked up. Okay, I don't need to fucking kill him just because he fucked up. But that's different than someone purposely trying to be an asshole. Then you're like, wait, hey man, like, I'm here.
And that scenario wasn't even him doing anything purposely. It's all heat in the moment. It's hard to remember not to grab somebody's ear.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's all these little things. I get it. I totally understand. But then, it's that tipping point where I'm like, oh shit, fuck you.
Yeah, exactly.
And that happens a lot in wrestling, and everybody's threshold is different. So that's why I like to be pretty cool throughout. Like, I'm not trying to hold anybody accountable for anything that they did on accident. You know what I mean? Accidents happen, but be professional about it. That's my main thing, is be professional and own up to the things you do. That's all.
Yeah, wrestling's weird like that, where, like anytime people go like, oh, this match, it became a shoot, right? Like there was a big one recently on AEW, Ivelisse and Thunder Rosa. They're like, oh, this match turned into a shoot. But every match that turned into a shoot at some point goes back to being a wrestling match. Like, because even if it's a shoot and they're really starting to punch each other, out of nowhere, someone still does like a vertical suplex, and you're like, well, this isn't a shoot anymore. You know what I mean? Like,
there's a difference between a shoot match and I don't see there's the thing. It's like, if you ever seen a match of mine go into a shoot match, it wouldn't go back to a regular match. It would me be kicking the crap or kicking the kneecaps out of whoever the fuck is fucking with me, and then I'd leave.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I have no obligation after that point. I don't care. After the professionalism breaks down in this ring, I'm done. I'm not risking my body anymore, especially for the peanuts that whatever place is giving you.
For the hot dog and a handshake.
I mean, I'm glad I don't have to deal with that anymore. I mean, I get paid better now, but back when you're starting out, it's a different story.
So let's go into, you took an extended break after starting out for a few years. What led up to that? And then what ultimately brought you back in? The Godfather 3 style. Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in.
I mean, I never thought that I was going to stop anyway. It was out of force. So I got a job, and the job was 40 hours straight on the weekends. So from Friday at midnight to Sunday at 4. So no wrestling shows ever. And as soon as I got out of that job and I was able to go back to weekends, I started wrestling again. And that was basically it. That stint that I took a break in, and there's some benefits that definitely came out of it for sure, because when I stopped, I was getting some severe sciatica, tailbone issues. I was doing stupid stuff when I was younger. I told people to move out of suicide dives, So that was the main one I can probably trace back the back injuries to, is the, landing on the basketball floor from a suicide, Conhilo. But that's that. So that kind of healed everything up. And then I think I got to digest a lot. I think when you take breaks from things or you take a step back from a lot of things, even now, you're able to maybe evaluate or change or think about things differently. So even now, even just the other day, I was thinking, oh, these some cool ways to adjust my new move sets or something like that, makes things different. But you get to heal and your body has new capabilities too. So that's also a different story. So that break was mainly because of a job, and then bringing it back was just because I wanted to. I never wanted to really stop in the first place.
I'm curious about just something off of what you just said about evaluating your move sets and everything. Has there been anything outside of wrestling that has given you an idea for something to do in the ring or a move?
That's the only place I look for wrestling move ideas. I don't watch wrestling. I watch local wrestling and the matches that are at the venues that I'm wrestling at. There's a couple reasons for that. One, I just got a little disenfranchised with wrestling. It just, And then two, I don't want to be tainted by anybody else's style. I think I have too much of other people's style in me already that I don't want somebody to look at me and go, hey, that looks like AJ Styles, or hey, that looks like, this guy or that guy, whatever. It doesn't matter. I want people to look at me and go, that's him. That's very specifically him, because that was another thing that was taught to me was don't ever do stuff that's going to make you remember somebody, make somebody else remember them. That's the opposite of what you're trying to do, Yeah. So I try to stay away from signature moves or anything else like that are very specific other people's stuff. Sorry, what was your question again?
Oh no, it's just where have you found like inspiration for moves and stuff?
Oh, okay, yeah, perfect. So yeah, movies. I mean, Ong Bak is probably the first one that I can give you. Chupacabra would probably tell you the same. I remember when we both watched that movie and we both did moves from the movie in our matches. So he did. Do you remember when he walked across the dude's shoulders and then he jumped off Chupacabra did that one. And then I think the moonsault into the double knees onto the guy's chest is one of my signature moves that I've been doing ever since I was 16.
Nice. Yeah, I love that. Like Scott Loss said, he got his idea for like this corner stomp thing he does from Batman the Animated Series in the intro. He's like, oh, I really loved when Batman jumped on the guy and then he rolled away from him and went like that. Yep. So I made a move where I was in the corner and the guy ran up and I would stomp on his chest and I would roll off of him. And he's like, oh, it's my favorite thing to do. And I was like, I love stuff like that. Like Vinny Massaro said he got it from like Tekken. He got a bunch of stuff. So
yeah, I think mine are very movie and video game related. John Wick, I take a lot of inspiration from John Wick. I think my more recent stuff is very grounded. So it's very martial arts grounded or judo or MMA grounded, because that's kind of where I see everything going. Whereas, back then you were like, all right, well, what's the most superhero move that I can do that looks the coolest? So yeah, I movies, video games, stuff like that is where I get a lot of my moves from, but I try to combine them and make things that are very unique again. So it's just so you're thinking of me and you're not like, hey, that's that,
Yeah. Well, that was one thing I loved watching, like when I used to work for APW back in the day. That's why I loved Vinny Massaro's matches, because he constantly did random stuff that you're like, what is that? I've never seen that before.
He's always come up with some crazy stuff.
Yeah. And so like that made me remember him. I mean, like he was wearing camo pants and a FUBU jersey. Like, I know. He had terrible gear.
Oh my God. That was one of the scariest things I ever took from Vinny Massaro and Big Ugly. When I first started in the business, they were doing the off the shoulders flip pile driver. And that was 2006, 7, so this is the flip pile driver just started, and they're doing I remember I was in a match with them and I was already worried. I'm already wrestling Vinny Massaro, Big Ugly. I'm like, all right, am I going to remember anything after this match? Or so when they were convincing me to do this that move, I was like, I'm so worried. But that was one of the first times I was in a move or in a discussion about a move, and I was just like, I'm so scared. I am so scared. But it was, everything went okay. I'm still here now, and ever since then I've been pretty much that same person. So that's kind of something I picked up from Vinny. I always throw the craziest shit out there, and if somebody goes, yeah, all right, then I go, all right, cool. Let's do this. And then if they're like, I don't know, then I have like 50 other things that I can throw in, to back it up with.
Yeah. Like, when I was talking to Taro, he said Super Dragon, because Super Dragon's his cousin. He was like, oh yeah, we were on a trampoline together and he's like, I made up this move. I'm going to put you on my shoulders like a torture rack, but then I'm going to flip you up into a pile driver.
Oh my God.
And thus the Psycho Driver is born.
On a trampoline.
On a trampoline. Places. And then he's like, oh, and then we did it in a match at Rev Pro. And it's like, you just did that move, and like that became like his signature base, the move that everyone remembers.
I know,
Besides
I remember that move.
Face. Yeah.
I remember that move. I love that move.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I used it as my finisher in my backyard fed for I don't know how long, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I love Super Dragon was my jam. I love PWG, man. That was the place I wanted to get to when I was 22. That was my goal. Didn't make it, clearly.
Yeah, well, a lot of people don't. I mean, like it's funny because people who are like, I remember when I first started, when PWG first started, I was kind of like, oh, it's just another, like, it's a great indie fed, but it's just another indie fed. But it's not really, because it's an indie fed that's like, you already have to be credible around like the United States indie scene just to get to like PWG. It's really tough to get there.
I think that was always my pinnacle. I think that was my success point, I guess, for, each individual has their own thing. Not to say that I don't feel like I was successful in any way, because I became a professional wrestler. And that's the main thing. But PWG was always, when I started, was my goal as a young kid. I was like, because I went there every month. Like me and my buddies, we took trips every month up in the car, and then a Geo Metro up to or down to SoCal to go watch them. Even before they had the everything was full. I mean, we were walk-ups,
Yeah.
And now it's, expensive and packed and crazy. So yeah, I love that place, man. That's kind of probably where my style, I think, originated from, that and WCW, Rey Mysterio, cruiserweights.
Yeah, it sounds like you were pretty much in the same boat as me as far as like watching WCW, because like the second I started like the cruiserweight division, I was like, this is the greatest thing ever.
Yeah.
Why doesn't everyone do this? I was
like 96, 97, man. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
What is happening? I think that's probably what pulled me in, because I was used to maybe WWF, where I was like, I still don't like the old Attitude Era set, like that old, like just the pillars with just old and ugly. I always like WCW. I'm still a big fan of the themed pay-per-views, like the sets and everything like that. I'm sad that doesn't exist anymore.
Oh, Halloween Havoc was the best. It was like,
oh my God, yes.
So great.
Yeah, Bash at the Beach, all these cool little themes that they had. That was, and we did that with our fed. I remember doing like a King of the Backyard like thing. We put like a lawn chair with black tarp on top of this big old structure that we made.
That's awesome.
So that's one of the things that drew us in as kids. So it's weird that they don't do that stuff now.
Yeah, I remember. It's funny though, because I went back on the network and I rewatched a bunch of the old Nitros, and they're definitely better in my memory than they like.
The
matches are still the matches that I want to see are still great.
Cruiserweight matches.
Watching Eddie Guerrero versus Dean Malenko for like the
always
8th time is always fucking good, no matter what.
Fucking love Dean Malenko.
But
it's one of my main inspirations right there, Dean Malenko.
Yeah. But then the next match will be like Sergeant Craig Pittman versus Ice Train, and you're like, oh dear Lord, why would anyone think this was a good idea?
Yeah.
Or Glacier, or just like
it's almost like WCW would have been better in episodes.
Right.
Like here's the cruiserweight section, and you watch that for 30 minutes, and then here's the rest.
Well, that's what the one thing Bischoff did that was super smart, was he always started with the cruiserweight match, because he's like, how do you get people in? Boom, there's Hurricane Ranas, there's Dragon Ranas, there's everything you could imagine. And that's the other good thing is on the network, is that it's parceled out by matches. You can just pick the matches, which is nice. But it's the same thing as all wrestling. Everyone remembers the Attitude Era so fondly, but if you go back now, it's like there's a lot of stuff there that's really not good, and it's kind of like
it's nostalgia, right?
Yeah, it's nostalgia, and part of that is through you want to call it woke whatever ideology that some people are so afraid to embrace.
Sure.
But like it's a lot of it was bad. A lot of it was bad. X-Pac did blackface on television.
Yeah, that wasn't great.
Yeah, it's not great. So when I first saw you was at our mutual friend, also host on this show, Jesus Cruz, on one of his shows doing lucha. You obviously were a fan of lucha style from seeing it on WCW, but what was what was it like working lucha, working to a lucha crowd, doing that kind of style of wrestling?
I think the biggest difference is the lucha crowd. As far as working lucha, I've worked lucha up until I became a professional because I'm right-handed and I did everything with my right until I learned that you do everything the opposite. So that wasn't really that difficult for me. I think once I kind of got indoctrinated and I was like, okay, left. Oh shit. Yeah. All right. Then it becomes a little bit more of an issue. But, after a couple of years of pro training or whatever, and then switching to the right, but like arm drags and stuff, like locking up is mainly the main thing I would say, because it's so natural to do the way you do it. To switch it up is weird sometimes, but if you know ahead of time, it's not a problem at all for me. The lucha crowd though is real different. I don't think I really have figured it out yet. Honestly, it varies because I think they just like to see cool shit, to be honest. I think it's just more like cool shit and less focus on heel face story. I think it's just kind of a spectacle. And that's kind of what I've kind of tailored my stuff around when I've been around a lucha crowd. I haven't focused too much on, I still kind of keep the same consistency because I have my moveset. But I try to add a little bit more flash, I think is what I try to do, even if I'm a heel.
Yeah, I just talked to Eli Everfly from Santino Brothers, and he was talking about, he said, and I never thought of this, but I thought it was really apropos when he said it. He said, lucha crowds aren't synchronized, American crowds are. American crowds, they'll very much be like, this is awesome, yep. if you and lucha crowds, it's like, no, you got to work like for individuals. You don't get to work for like the whole crowd.
Yeah, that's one of the things I that makes sense, because I did, when I was working the lucha crowd, I would always pick somebody out because I think I was mostly a face during that time. So I would pick somebody out to look in their eyes and just do that. And then I would do that through each individual. And I think with lucha crowds, I tended to connect with the kids. I try to connect with the kids more than worrying about the adults, which is what I did with the American crowds. I worried more about an older audience there.
Yeah. And then, lucha crowds is you'll have someone who's in the back row run up and scream at the Rudos in the middle of a match. You're like, what's going on right now?
Yeah, and you just have the random horns, the burp, burp, just everywhere, and it's you just got to keep going. It's not like I don't think there's much of like you said, it's synced versus unsynced. It's you're working more detailed versus overall, and for me it's the same thing with the age groups you're working. I think you're working a younger age group generally with a lucha crowd, or at least the style, like a flashier kind of younger style versus something that's slow and methodical and thought out and like, very technical, because that's almost more English,
Yeah. And then also I wanted to get into, I recently had Sour Boone on the podcast. I just recorded an episode with Dark Sheik. So I would like to know your experience at Hoodslam, working from, doing lucha / doing, it's almost like full circle now, because now you're, you started off in a backyard atmosphere, and Hoodslam isn't backyard by any means. Everyone is trained and all that, but it is very punk rock. It is very dirty and grimy and wonderful like that. So, how did you, when you started getting into Hoodslam, what did you think of it, and how much fun did you start having?
Okay, so I love Hoodslam. I knew about Hoodslam since probably its inception. I remember being in the by where the training was for Devil Mountain, and I remember Sam coming in the back, Sheik coming in the back, and talking about the idea of Hoodslam and just doing all these crazy characters and stuff like that. And I think this is when I was kind of either coming back or was trying to, or I had a little bit of time here and there, and I was very inconsistent. So I was excited about the aspect of bringing video games into wrestling in it anyway. So that already sounded awesome. But getting involved in Hoodslam was one of the best things that's happened to me. It's awesome. It's so much fun. And it's not just fun in the sense that, you go out there and you can work as hard as you want, or you can try to be as entertaining as you want. and it'll be received the same. You know what I mean? You can put on a 5-star match, or you can do one hold and be 5-star entertaining, and they'll be like eating it up the entire time. And I think that's the one of the great things about Hoodslam is the diversity of not only everybody that's in the locker room, but also the type of wrestling that you get to see and witness. Because you can go from one match that's just absolutely insane craziness to the next most methodical, like weird, cereal pouring, drugs smoking, crack sniffing bunny. It's just the randomness that happens. And then all of a sudden it turns into a horror show and you have somebody breaking out of a body bag, So, and while those are the entertaining aspects of it, the things that happen in the ring are very cohesive and in context of those individual things. And that's what makes it so amazing, I think. As far as it being dirty and grimy, that's fucking right.
Yeah, but in a great way. I mean, like there's there's stuff about like I love that like punk rock atmosphere of things. That's why I like I like indie movies. I love things that are, to me, if you make like $100 million blockbuster film and there's no soul to it, I could give a shit. But if you make a $5,000 movie and it looks like crap, you can tell the people who made it love what they fucking made. I'm like, I love this. I love everything about this. And I appreciate that way more. And that's what I loved about, like, when I interviewed Dark Sheik, she said, basically, we weren't trying, to make it look like, like Raw or SmackDown, because if we did, it would look silly.
Yeah.
They don't have that budget.
It's beautiful because, like, it's just so, I don't know. I didn't, there's not even a word to describe of how awesome it is, because the way that it all came together so beautifully, you know what I mean? It's just the perfect recipe for that type of wrestling,
Yeah, and I feel like it's inspired a lot of copycat promotions. There's as it's going to. That's pretty much the way it works, But I wanted to go into a little bit of wrestling around NorCal, wrestling around different parts of the country, working different crowds. What have you noticed about the differences in, locker rooms, crowds, working different parts of the, just like, what do you see, especially because you've been doing it for a while, like, how has it evolved over time?
I guess it's hard to tell you how much it evolved, because I think you're so wrapped up when you're younger that you probably don't notice half the things that are going on around you. But I think it's a lot more inclusive now. I think a lot of people there's a lot less assholes in the locker room. There's a lot more things that are tolerated as far as just discussion and, I mean, just nerdyism. That back then it was like man's man type shit. You wouldn't bring up video games in a locker room, something like that. For instance, it's just a small example. And then now, everyone's talking about it, stuff like that. So it's a lot more. I think it's a lot more representative of the age group that's involved in it now. And but as far as going to different places, the locker rooms I think they're all vary. My favorite locker room has been Hoodslam, just because of everybody there works hard, wants to do the best they can. You know what I mean? And when I go to other locker rooms, it's just depending on who the talent is. Generally the younger people are trying to do, the best they can. Sometimes they fail, sometimes they don't. And then you have the veterans who are there that are, either chugging along or specifically have a certain thing in mind for their promotion, whatever. So like when I go up north, for instance, like Oregon or Washington, it varies in that the way the states handled professional wrestling. So for instance, in Washington, I believe that at the time there was no wrestling schools. I think they are now, but there wasn't any professional wrestling schools. They had like the athletic commission involved in it. You had to get a license, all that stuff. And that was really causing a lot of problems for the scene up there, obviously. So you had a lot of underground happening. So you have backyard semi-pro places happening. And then in Oregon, I don't think you did not have that problem, but you kind of had more of an old school feel, I noticed. I think just because of, Piper came from there. So there's a lot of more of an old school feel I noticed from Oregon. But as far as the locker room, everyone seemed respectful. Everybody always shook hands. That's the one thing I noticed about the wrestling world is that regardless if they're faking it or not, everybody always says hello and always says goodbye, and is generally one of the most professional things that's bestowed on you when you start in the business. You don't really learn that anywhere else, as far as I know.
Yeah, I know some of the guys I interviewed from Luke Hawks' school in Louisiana. Like in Louisiana, every show you go to, you got to bring your blood test, like because it's so regulated. On like they want to make sure, like, prove you're not, gonna cut yourself open and give someone else something that they shouldn't have. Or they also have to have it so you have to, like, when WrestleMania weekend was there, basically you couldn't run a show unless you had a license to run wrestling in Louisiana, and to do that you have to be from Louisiana. So like local promoters basically loaned out their permits. They were like, I'm co-producing this show with them in order for, because everyone, comes to WrestleMania weekend and run shows. So in order to do that, you had to co-promote with people who actually live there, meaning you give a little scratch and you're good. You know what I mean? That kind of thing.
Okay.
But
so they had to give a little rub to the local feds then.
Yeah. Which is good though. That to me is kind of good, rather than, everyone just kind of jumping in and exploiting the.
Yeah. I wouldn't be opposed to that. I don't hate that idea at all. Yeah. But I mean, teach their own. Yeah. I've always been the type of person who's like, look, I'm here. There's stuff out there, and I'm not going to go begging or looking for work. That's past the time. It's the same with the when they come in for WrestleMania weekend. There's people, man, they fly out there and they're just like waiting at the door, like, can I get a match? Can I get a match? And it's like, is that match going to do it for you? Is that really going to set you on the path to success for the rest of your life?
Yeah. All right, brother. The booker has ran out. He's yelling to take it home. So we're going to do that. I got some questions for you. You can answer these as slowly as you like, though. There's no hard rules here.
I've been hitting my head a few times, or dropped on my head a few times.
There you go. Well, actually, we'll start with that. What's the injury list?
Oh, okay. Injury list: cauliflower ear. I've got, several scars on my head here from my glasses. Ankle injuries. I've never had any broken bones. Concussions. I've had a few. But not significant enough to I don't think past 5 or so. I've probably had maybe 3 serious ones. 1 serious one.
What happened there?
That was when I was training when I was younger. So I just remember running the ropes and taking a hip toss or something like that. And the next thing I know is that Rick Luxury slams a composite book down. He says, if you're going to fucking ask me one more time, I'm going to write it down for you. This is what happened. So I had been bugging him a few times. So that was probably my worst concussion. As far as the worst injury, I would say that suicide dive where the idea was to go into the chairs, but people dived before I did. So all the chairs got scattered and moved. And I was like, fuck it, I'm going to do it anyway. And so I went for it. Everybody moved, suicide cone helo, and just straight boom onto the basketball floor, slid. That screwed up. I mean, that's the first time I've ever felt. Have you ever had sciatica?
No, luckily.
Okay, so
knock on wood.
I was in a match with Brian Cage there, and I remember there was so much shit that I still had planned with him, like, I don't know, all crazy stuff. And I remember going for a drop kick, and I did not have any power in my right foot, in my right leg at all. It just was pain. And then so having to finish the match through that's kind of the weird wrestling proud thing about injuries is you screw yourself up and you still keep going, even though you probably shouldn't. So I've hyperextended my knee. There's somebody belly to belly me into the corner turnbuckle. And my right foot, my bottom of my right foot caught on the turnbuckle. And then, my knee went in. Yeah. I was in a, you know what an emerald fusion is?
Oh,
so
yeah.
legs up here, head here. He didn't quite let go of the legs. So I got just crunched together like this.
Just compacted down, yeah.
Yep, right there. That I still feel every once in a while if I turn wrong or something, like in my chest. What else? I think that's probably the most ones that I remember. Yeah. Oh no, I got a missing piece of my elbow right here. There's a flat piece. That's a chipped piece of my elbow just floating around. That's from falling off a ladder into a pile of chairs. I should have remembered not to slap the mat, but you know,
wow, yeah,
second nature.
Yeah, that suicide dive reminds me of if you get a chance, look up Eli Everfly B-boy.
Oh yeah, mm-hmm.
B-boy gorilla press slams him from the ring to the outside.
Yeah,
and he goes straight like hip first, I want to say, onto basketball floor.
Yeah, that's. I remember seeing that, and it reminded me of that, and I just go, dude, I would stop for a while.
Yeah, just like.
Oh my God, that hurts so bad. That was one of the worst things, man. It still bugs you.
As far as concussions go, though, I'm really glad that like we know more now, because I feel like a lot of the stories that people tell on this podcast, they probably wouldn't happen now, because they're like, back then they're kind of like, oh, you don't know where you're at right now? That's cool. I'm gonna go ahead and pile drive you anyway. And you're like,
dude, I do that shit to myself. I was in Oregon. 2 minutes into the match, I got a concussion. So I run the ropes. The guy trips my leg, and I went 110% into the mat.
Yeah.
So I ran the ropes. He took my legs. I went boom. 2 minutes into the match, I finished the rest of the match with a concussion, and I did. I did all the stuff I said I was going to do, and I didn't know. I remember in the middle of the match, I go, I don't know what's going on. I got a concussion. What's next? He goes, reverse web dive out. And I go, okay. So he goes out. He's out there, and I go, all right, I guess I'm doing the thing. So I run, backflip over to the top rope to the outside with a concussion. And I'm like, dude, after the match, I asked him, I was like, did I do the dive out? He goes, yeah. I was like, dude, shouldn't have done the dive out. Shouldn't have done any of that.
Damn.
But it's like you go into autopilot when you're a pro wrestler. Sometimes it's like you've been drilled so hard that even with a concussion, I was still able to finish. I don't know. It was like a 15-minute match still. I was 2 minutes in. It was like the first thing that happened. I got tripped, and it was like, standoff, trip, go outside, switch off. That's how it goes. It's a 4-way match or whatever. And I had to finish the rest of the match with a concussion. I remember being in the back at the end. I go, so we're done. And I did all the things. He's like, yeah, the match is over. You did all the stuff. Did it look good?
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, I think it looked good. And I'm like, did I do the dive and then went backwards and I didn't hurt anybody and I'm fine? Yeah. I'm like, all right, cool. Then we're good.
Yeah, we Jesus interviewed Wild Storm on here. Do you remember Wild Storm from?
Oh yeah.
He wrestled, I think, a full match and a battle royal, and at the end of the show, he was just standing there by the door, and somebody's like, "What are you doing? We need to go." And he's like, "I'm waiting for my music." Shit. And he didn't remember anything.
That sucks.
Yeah, I was that one's bad. Like he literally.
It's funny now that we're talking about it. I'm like, I probably had more than 3.
Yeah.
I remember another one when I was younger in the middle of a match. Do you know who Tito Aquino is?
Oh yeah, I trained with him at Pro Wrestling Iron.
Okay, so you're aware. I was in the corner and he's going ham on me right in the corner, and next thing I know, boop, I'm out. Right, just black, and I go down. Right, I slope into the corner. I wake up. I get back up. He's still pop, 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 just beating the shit out of me. I'm like, okay, yep. That one. I'm gonna log that one. I'm gonna put that one on the. That's more than 3.
Any favorite road stories that you have?
Favorite road stories. Okay. None of these are my favorite. They all sucked. So all of my road stories end with my cars dying. So. So I'll give you 2 good ones. So one, I was headed up to Washington. I get about 75 miles away from my town towards Washington. And my right front tire, the axle it's just off. Like it's just off, coming off, So I pull over to the side. I call my brother who knows about cars and stuff to fix them. He comes up and he says, okay, maybe I'll be able to fix it and you'll be on your way, or we have to tow it. And and I'm like, shit, I need to get up there. I think this might have been even the match where I was wrestling super crazy. So I'm like, even more, I'm like, fuck, I gotta get up there, Yeah. So he gets out there and just figures out that nothing can be fixed. He has to take a hairpin that my buddy had on him to slide into. There's a pin where it holds the whole wheel together, and because in order to get the car on the tow truck, you have to have that. I guess you have to have that there. I don't know shit about cars, clearly. He did. So he put that there. They were able to get it on the tow truck, had to drive it all the way back to the hometown. My dad was cool enough to be like, hey, you can borrow my car. I'm like, all right. So I take that car, and then now I head all the way back up to Seattle. That was one. That wasn't too bad. The one that was really bad was I drove up there, had the match. Match was over. It was like midnight or 2:00 in the morning. We were ready to go get some pizza with everybody. I sold a shit ton of merch. I got.
So you're feeling real good at this point.
Yeah, oh fuck yeah, it's awesome, right? Super, right, ready to and we're fucking, me and my buddy, we're road warriors. So we're just like we're gonna get pizza and we're gonna drive home. So like we had drove up, wrestled, drive home, from Seattle. So it's a full on, 24-hour whatever trip, but because you don't get a lot of sleep, So on the way to the pizza, our buddies in front of us, they take a turn. My car just kind of dies. And I'm like, this is a new car, by the way. This is a whole different car now. They pull over because they realize it's still green and we're not coming. And then, and if you know anything about, have you ever been to Seattle? If you know Seattle, the streets are kind of San Francisco. So it's up, down, up, down, up, down everywhere, right in the main city. And so we turn. My car kind of starts back up again. I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna do anything. We're just gonna go. We're gonna go home. Fuck it. We're not gonna get pizza. And right in the intersection, just nope. Stopped right there. The street this way is a hill up. The street this way is a hill down. Like there's and I have to push the car somewhere. I got to get it out of the way. And also I have like a big old box of merch with me. I've got some gimmick with me. I've got another person with me. I've got all my gear, everything. So the car stops, we pull it over to the side, and so we establish that we're fucked. So that the car is completely done. It's blown, the gasket or whatever. I don't think it was I don't know if it was engine or what, transmission. I think it was a transmission issue at the time. The transmission completely shot. So I'm stuck in Seattle with like all my stuff, and I've got to figure out now how to get home. So guess what I had to do? I had to use all the money I made to buy a plane ticket to get home. Yeah.
And I'm sure you had to pay extra for bag fees on that.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's so I used the extra money that I had left over to ship my merch back to me because there was a God bless him, Rook Kelly. Do you know him? He's from Seattle, and he kept the license plates because we had to keep there was this whole fucking process of because we had to sell the car. I mean, I can't just leave the car there either.
Yeah.
So I had to find a place at 2:00 in the morning that was willing to tow the car and keep the car. That wasn't mine. It was my girlfriend's. So I didn't even have the title.
Wow. That doesn't seem like that should be possible.
They took it. We had to pay them.
Of course.
Which is shit. Because it's, I mean, you fix the transmission on that car, it's good. You know what I mean? So I think it was $500 just for them to take the car. So that's my start into the night. Then plane ticket, then mailing the merch home. So that was a shitty trip.
Damn.
I don't, and as far as fun road stories, I don't really have that many because it's generally pretty straight shot for me and come back.
Yeah.
But one of the most memorable ones is going up with the Suburban Commandos, the Twins, and everybody. And I was 16. I was not, I was trying to hold my breath, not trying to get high. You know what I mean? But those guys are always a blast. I mean, it's always a fun time to ride with people anywhere, when you're on a road trip. So
I always consider, wrestling's a physical thing, but I also consider wrestling a very creative thing. You're putting together matches, you're coming up with moves, coming up with gimmick, doing all the stuff that you're supposed to do. If not wrestling, what would be your thing to do creatively?
Okay, so this is what I did when I took a break or had to because of work. So I think, because wrestling tends to lend itself to creative people, I think. And if you don't have it, that's why people feel very empty when it's not there. So I did a lot of video editing. I did that before anyway, and I did video editing, and we did like small sketch comedy videos and stuff like that. So I had a whole YouTube channel that was dedicated. I mean, it has over 200 sketch comedy videos during the time that I was taking a break from wrestling. So that's what I would have done. If I hadn't, I had not been working, I would have had 200 wrestling matches or whatever. But yeah, sketch comedy videos, action videos, video game related. So like, at the time it was Call of Duty Black Ops and Modern Warfare. So we were doing live action with like airsoft rifles, and I was getting into special effects. So I was learning After Effects and 3D programs like Blender and stuff like that to make like 3D bullets and cool stuff like that. That's kind of what I was getting into.
All right. What's your favorite move or hold that you don't use?
Oh, shit. That I don't use. I started to just reintroduce everything that I do now. Oh, man. I don't think I have one because I do everything that I like.
No worries.
Yeah.
What's the craziest fan interaction you've had?
Craziest fan interaction? I don't know. I'm kind of an asshole, so I don't really... My conversations don't go that long. I don't... usually it's at the merch table, and there's anything that's... I mean, I've had one guy come up to me and go, "Hey, I pay in $2 bills because the hookers think it's, a 20.
Okay.
It's not very crazy or
yeah. It's weird.
Like, that's why I carry $2 bills around.
It's weird. That's for sure.
I'm sure it works. You just got that 2 there. I don't know what more you get out of it.
Yeah. Besides hurting you, or in Tito Aquino's case, knocking you out, what's the worst thing someone could do when you're working with them in a match?
Oh, I don't know. Be unprofessional. I mean, I don't know. There's no one thing that like pisses me off. I mean, if somebody slaps me in the fucking ear, then you're getting a receipt regardless. I don't care. That one is just that. I think that's just going to be the gold standard for professional wrestling. I think if you get slapped in the ear, you get a receipt. I think nowadays, if you start coming at me too hard, that's probably one of the things that kind of, it's one of my pet peeves, throws me off a little bit. But unprofessionalism right out of the gate. So whether it is, thinking you know too much, or, you're stubborn in your ways, or you're uncollaborative, or, that kind of thing. That really bugs me more than anything else.
And how do you react? How do you deal with someone who's like just not wanting to be collaborative in a way? Like, is it just like, it's like, oh, how about we do this in the match? And they're like, nah. Well, how about this? Nah. Like, how do you respond? How do you deal with that?
Luckily, I haven't had too many of those cases. But I've also tried to adapt around everybody's work style. So this may even sound, I'll tell you. This is silly. So I have an entire notes list that has probably the list of all my moves on it with a checkbox. And there's heel spots, face spots, top rope moves, backbreakers, whatever, right? And then there's even a section for large opponents and smaller opponents. So if I have a smaller opponent, I generally will do all my lifting backbreakers. If I have a larger opponent, I will do the jumping on stuff to them. So when it comes to people who say no or are opposed to doing certain things, I'd like to say I'm pretty good at convincing people. I mean, a good example, I mean, he didn't say no or anything, but he wasn't uncollaborative in any way, but I had to help him figure out what it was. You know what I mean? So I just approach it in any way that I would normally and say, hey, okay, well, it's going to be easy and it'll look cool and you don't have to do much. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what I try to work into my moveset as well, as I try to make it so it's not difficult for the opponent to participate.
Mm.
So I should be able to do it whether they agree or not.
Yeah.
So if there's ever been a time where they don't agree or they want to have a shitty match and I'm unwilling to have a shitty match, then I do the stuff that makes me look good and I don't care what happens to them.
Mm.
Not necessarily physically, but in the sense that I can still do stuff that makes me look good without having their participation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you're not, because half of wrestling is making the other person look great as well, and
exactly.
If they're not willing to put in an effort, then it's like, well, that part's a little foregoed now, isn't it?
Also, a pro tip: don't tell them ahead of time.
There you go.
If it's something simple, like, I mean, I don't know how many times I've landed in the middle of the ring. I mean, if the guy would have said no ahead of time, I would have just said nothing. And then in the middle of the match, I would have said springboard for him. And then I would have rolled out to the apron and I would have jumped off the springboard and I would have found him. I can go wherever I need to go.
Yeah.
And he's going to get it. A person is going to land on him.
Yeah.
How he reacts to that, not my problem.
It's the old better to ask for forgiveness than ask for permission,
Yeah, and I've never had anybody afterwards go, what the fuck, you did this and this and this, you know what I mean?
Yeah, because as long as you don't actually hurt them,
I'm not nailing them. Yeah, I'm not destroying their face with it. I'm being safe about it, and that's one of the main things I pride myself on is that I'm very logical and I think a lot of my stuff out, even to the steps. Not to where I go, okay, I need a step here, I need a step here. But when I'm actually thinking about the moves or the moves that I'm going to do or the moves that somebody else is going to do, I don't think about just how, okay, if I do a suplex, I got to make sure I protect their neck. No, I also think about how your ankle placement is or how their ankle placement is or how far your spacing is from the turnbuckle so you don't catch your ankles, shit like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I pride myself on that and I really focus on making sure I get things right before I actually implement them in the match. So a good example would be like a spiral tap. I miss it hundreds of times before I actually decide to actually hit it on somebody.
When's a time that you were legitimately surprised by someone else in the ring?
Oh, all the time. Yeah. And honestly, I think that's when the wrestling is the most exciting. And then after the match, you're the most pumped up about it because you're like, oh shit, this guy got it. He's like, it's almost like when you get in a match and you talked about it or whatever, and the match flows and you guys didn't say a damn word to each other the whole time. You just had this match and everybody's going nuts. And you come at the end, you're like, did we just fucking have this match without saying a damn word? And sometimes you can even have those matches with people that like, I remember wrestling Douglas James and I remember wrestling him and I was like, oh my God, this was so much fun. Like you just get surprised by, and I don't want to say surprised because people are good at their craft. And I don't want to say like, he surprised me because before I thought he wasn't this good. I don't want to say that. I want to be surprised in the sense that the experience surprised me in the way that, oh my God, we were able to do this so cohesively with so little effort, so little effort in the sense of mental effort,
Yeah. It's a creative sync. It's like, it's not just surprised at them being good. It's surprised that your style and personalities meshed as well as it did in that moment. It's like when you're jamming out with someone and they're playing, you got two guys on guitar jamming with each other and then each person doubles up the other one like flawlessly. And you're like, okay, so you went the exact same place I was going to go. I had no idea that's where you're going to go. Holy shit. That's amazing.
Yeah. That is one of the best. I think that's probably the best feeling of professional wrestling for me. And I get the most high from when after a really good match where like everything went so smooth, and you didn't even have to think about it so hard, and it just, and everybody ate it up. That's so perfect. But I mean, people surprise me all the time with like moves they do, and just I get more surprised by the verbal aspect of professional wrestling because I suck at it. I'm decent, but I'm not as good. So when people cut good promos and make, they speak well, or they do certain things like that. Tresario comes to mind. It just, that's surprising because I'm like, shit, like he worked on that. He got there from somewhere else, and it's just great to see people improve like that. That's what's awesome.
Has a booker tried to stiff you on money? And if they have, what are some of the funnier excuses given?
So I've never been actually stiffed on money. I've just been lowballed, and then the excuses for that. So I've never been stiffed. One, because when I first was training, I was with people who would not allow that. Try to stiff Apple Bummer, and you let me know how that goes. Or even the Suburban Commandos, or the Stoner Brothers. Try to do that, and let me know how that works out for you. As far as I've had promoters always give you the whole, I can only pay you $20 because I only make this much on the gate, or I've only made this much, or these people came in. It's kind of the same old that you get from every other promoter. But I've always been paid what I've asked, but I've always been reasonable, and I've worked with people, so I've never been outrageous with my fee because I know who I am, and I know what level I'm at, and I know what people can afford and what level they're at.
Yeah. Have you got the I'll PayPal you later?
Yes. I have. And I did get it though.
Okay.
I did get it though. But I would only let that happen to people who I would trust,
Yeah. I
don't know if I would take a PayPal from just some fucking schmo. If I was driving to a different state, I would not be taking a PayPal. Matter of fact, I would probably ask for half up front and then half later.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I talked about that with Scott Lost because he's a comic book artist, and he was talking about, and he was like, oh yeah, he's like, I don't understand when I do commissions, I ask for half up front. He's like, that's how wrestling should be, because honestly, he's like, the amount of times that people tried to stiff me on money was insane. And
I'm sure he has a huge experience with that.
Yeah.
I got to wrestle him once in a tables match. That was awesome.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's him, Joey Ryan. It was a NorCal versus SoCal match in GZW in Modesto. I don't know if you remember them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
0.
Who was your partner in that?
Shit, I don't remember. Maybe Dana Lee.
Okay.
Yeah. It was like 3-on-3, I think. I remember because that was the first time I learned that the SoCal NorCal shit was all beef, and stiffing was a beef, and I laid into Joey Ryan, and he was like, lighten up, kid. It's all work. I'm like, oh, we don't all hate each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, okay. And then from then on, I've always adopted the, like, you start railing in on me, I'm gonna knock you the fuck out.
Yeah. There's a thing where, like, there's a difference between working stiff and the other person is not down, or two people who know, hey, are we going in tonight? And they're like, yeah. And like, cool. Like, and there are definitely guys that do that, like if you watch any of the Super Dragon Taro matches, they're basically kicking the shit out of each other the entire match. You're like, good Lord. Like, that's just the way, it just depends on the workers and how they're feeling. But how did you find, like, working with SoCal guys? I mean, like, you found out, oh shit, it is a work. Like, it's not a big beef,
That was back then. So that was when I was younger. So that changed my whole perception on everything. But even then, I was wanting to work with SoCal guys. I just thought that they hated us because we're NorCal, and we hate them because they're SoCal or whatever. And they don't want us to work there, and we don't want them to work here, blah, 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 blah. It's all bullshit.
Yeah.
So when I actually, probably more recently, when I came back and I started working with more SoCal guys, it's just different. I think they work at a higher pace. Like, they're more rapid fire. I think they have more of a lucha influence than maybe we do up here. I loved it. I mean, I think that's definitely more geared towards my style. That's probably why I liked wrestling Douglas so much, and that's why I liked wrestling Matt Cross so much, and those guys. I think it lends itself to my style. I have a harder time with the slower stuff.
I feel like it's kind of a bummer that it's gone now, but I feel like you would have done well with like bar wrestling down there.
Oh, I know. Yeah, that would have been great. Yeah. Bar wrestling would have been fun. Yeah.
What's the hardest you've laughed at an indie show?
No, it's probably been at a Hoodslam, and I could not tell you what it was because there's so many moments. Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't.
All right. What's the worst gimmick you've seen on the indie scene?
Without throwing anybody under the bus, I don't know. Just go to any fucking local indie show.
I'll go with this then. What's right now is the most overused ring gear gimmick? Like for instance, when right before you had started out,
you mean the Punisher logo?
Well, what is it?
The Punisher logo. That's what I had on my.
Oh, okay. No, I was gonna say there was a time in the early 2000s when everyone was Raven. Everyone had jean shorts and a cutoff T-shirt. No matter what in the indie scene, and some of them were great workers, but they still had that look, and you're like, why? Like Reckless Youth had that look, and you're like, you're better than this. You don't need this. But so, what would you say right now is like the most overused stuff that people are wearing?
I would say I don't know if there's any specific overused stuff. I think it's a very generic look that everyone's kind of going for right now. It's like the indie wrestler look that we all tried to avoid when we were coming up. I think the non-caricature wrestler, the Adam Cole, the just the I have a catchphrase wrestler, right? There's nothing really specifically about them. They're a pro wrestler and they have some gear, but there's no character direction necessarily, I think that's what I see the most. I don't know if there's any like specifically overused gimmick that I can tell, especially since wrestling's been shut down for so long. I mean,
that's true.
Like I can't even.
When you're working on indie shows, you find yourself on cards either wrestling with or just on the same card as you. You got names that are bigger names, quote unquote. Guys that wrestled in WWF, WWE, WCW, ECW, blah blah blah, or you just high level indies. Were there any guys that worked on a show with you that acted like they were bigger than the show, really just rubbed you the wrong way? You're like, okay, guy, like, this isn't necessary.
I don't think there's. Not any time that I've worked on a show that I remember anybody being like, surprisingly, everybody's been pretty cool. I have noticed some people being a little like grumpy, but I wouldn't attribute like a whole bitch fit to them. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And I would say it's more the old timers, like the way 90s guys, those guys that are looking or putting on maybe trainings for guys that are younger, and they're like, do you guys even fucking know anything? Have you ever fucking learned anything? That kind of thing.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, I've heard that.
Mm.
Yeah. Like, this is the kind of fucking talent that exists, but it is what it is. Some people are grumpy, maybe had a bad day. I don't care. But generally, I'm not going to lie to you. When I go to these situations and there's an asshole in the locker room, I remove myself. I just go somewhere else, man. I'm not in the wrestling business to deal with the bullshit drama that exists in it. That is one of the worst things about wrestling. It's hard enough to deal with your own ego and all the jealousy that you have to deal with yourself, but to deal with all the other bullshit that comes from other people that have some other stubborn or high ideals about themselves is ridiculous. Everybody's on the same page.
Yeah, when I talked to Dark Sheik, she said she was actually relieved when Vader dropped out of the Hoodslam show.
I wasn't there for that. I heard that one was a little weird. I heard maybe Rob Van Dam was a little weird. Yeah. I don't,
Yeah, she was like, you know what? Ugh, I'm just fucking glad he's not coming. I don't like this guy.
Yeah.
So I was just like, oh, okay, that's great. Because sometimes, you dealt with it, when people rub you the wrong way, the best thing you could do is just remove yourself, because why even,
I'm that type of person to begin with anyway. I'm a very low drama guy, so I generally tend to either just write you off completely if you're a dick to me and just go, all right, fuck you, you're done in my life, or I just go somewhere else. And most of those situations are not. I haven't been in an indie locker room consistently with a big star like that, where it's a constant relationship where I see something. But if I saw something consistently, it'd be different. You know what I mean? Yeah. But if I don't know them and it's just this one time they're being an asshole, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to go over here. You know, what are you talking shit about? But it's very rare. I've never really come across any kind of situation like that.
But I do love when the suspicions are confirmed. There was a guy who wrestled at one of the promotions I worked for earlier, and I always thought, this guy's a dick. I hate this guy.
Oh, yeah.
And then he got a call up, got to the big old WWE.
I think I might know who you're talking about.
And then he got fired.
Fuck that guy.
He got fired because he was an asshole and he was difficult to work with. And I went, oh, good. That's what I thought.
Was he a pro wrestling iron guy, too? Wasn't bitch tits, was it?
Anyway, yes, it was. Yeah, I hate that fucking guy.
He was an asshole to me when I was young coming up, dude.
He's an asshole to everyone. He's a dickhead. Yeah. I was just like, ugh, like, fuck you, dude. And
he would try to be cool in the back, too.
Yeah. And then to hear he got fired because he was an asshole even makes it better for me. I'm like, that's good.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, look, this is... You fucking did it to yourself, you know? And it is what it is. There was another guy. Do you remember Mark Vega?
Mark Vega? No. That sounds familiar, but I don't remember him.
He was an asshole, too.
Yeah, see? That's the way it goes. All right. I think you already answered this. Normally I call this the touchy-feely question. What's your pure joy in wrestling? The thing that gives you goosebumps. You're like, this is why I fucking love the business. I think you already answered it, though. With the,
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can expand on that a little bit, too, though. I mean, besides the feeling of having that good match, chasing that unicorn, I guess, right?
Yeah.
The good match with the in-sync feeling. And in addition to that, I think the reason I got into wrestling was because I wanted to, I was creative, but I wanted to do stunt work. I wanted to be a stuntman when I was growing up, you know, because I thought that was a more realistic path than professional wrestling. I don't know, whatever. So stuntman and acting, all that stuff kind of rolled into one. I love the physical and spectacle aspect of doing flashy shit. So that's where I get the joy out of it. I like looking cool. I like doing cool things. It's just the same reason I watch John Wick or On Bach. You know, I like seeing them do cool stuff. And that's kind of what I try to bestow or try to have as my character, and to show other people, and hopefully they attach to that as well. They're like, oh, I like the cool shit he does, but also there's some reason behind it, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Any pranks or embarrassing stories that you can remember? Stuff that happened during a match and you couldn't shake. You were like, damn it, I can't believe that happened. I couldn't, and you just couldn't shake it for a while.
I don't think I've ever had anything during the match, or that I remember, because there's so many matches. And maybe I'll toot my own horn and say that I try to keep people too busy, that they tend to not have the time to do that shit with me. So I don't know. I think there's no pranks or anything that happened during the match, because I generally try to, unless it's something like it's a throwaway match or something like that, or we're doing a fun match and that's on purpose. I don't think I've ever had a match where something like that's happened in it. You know what I mean? Yeah. I'm pretty strict on that. I guess I keep it pretty straightforward, unless it's like it's a joke match. I mean, I had a match with Johnny Butabi once where we set up a gigantic chair death trap outside the ring, and the entire match was just like when my glasses fell off, that would cue him to pick them up, and that means he goes and grabs a chair and adds it to the pile. Then I'd hit him, the glasses would come off, I'd get him, put them on, go grab a chair, put it in the pile, and then we tease the pile, and then we'd go back, get more chairs, put it in the pile, tease the pile, go back, get more chairs. At the point, it was just this gigantic mass of chairs. We never used it. The whole point was just to base the match around the structure that we were going to build.
That is fantastic. I had a Darwin Finch on here, and he told a story of in pro wrestling down south. Another thing I think you'd enjoy doing. Dark Sheik does it. Okay. And they had an entire, like, they were going to do blood sport, like where the two guys were going to do the resin with the ropes and the glass.
Oh yeah.
And they did it. the whole beginning and like ceremony took like 20 minutes, and one guy punched him once, and he went, "I quit," and that was the end of the match.
Oh my god! Did I ever tell you that I saw a real one, a Taipei death match? Is that what it's called?
Yeah,
right? Yeah. Joe Applebaum or fucking Pogo the Clown did one. He did one with who was it? Carnage. Sounds like it'd be Carnage from down, right? Is it, no, Supreme? Probably
maybe Supreme.
Probably Supreme.
R.I.P. Supreme.
Yeah, I think it was Supreme and him. Either that or Cyanide. I mean, probably interchangeable in those. I think it was Supreme, but yeah, they did the ropes, or they had something on, they dipped it or whatever, and they put it in the glass. And I was like, dude, what? I was like 16 years old.
Oh my god!
Getting trained to be a professional wrestler. I'm like, motherfuckers are putting glass on their fists.
You're like, we don't have to do that part, right? Like,
I'm not doing pointy things.
Yeah.
I'll do tables, I'll do planks, I'll do ladders. As soon as you start introducing shit that fucking is pointy, I'm out.
Yeah, recently there was on AEW, Darby Allin did a gimmick where he had on the bottom of a skateboard a bunch of thumbtacks glued on, right? God. And so on Ricky Starks, what they were supposed to do was he was going to go off the top rope and he was going to land it on his back. Mm-hmm. And what Ricky Starks thought was, he said this in an interview after on a podcast. He said, "I thought it was just going to land on me and come right off, and that was it." Well, no, It dragged.
And did he like jump on him with his feet and everything? Like he held it. Oh my god!
Yeah, and of course it fucking dragged because that's what's gonna happen. Yeah. Oh my god.
I mean, I've been hit with a belt, like a leather belt. I mean, that sucks. I've been thrown into. I mean, I've been cut by stuff that's like metal. That's just been sticking out places. Oh my god! No, thank you.
So that's why we talked to Mike Modest, and he straight up said, "Oh, I just told them if you want me to bleed, it'll cost an extra few $100." He's like, "Nobody ever asked me to do it."
Yeah,
and I was like, "That's pretty smart." She's like, "Oh yeah,
I'll do it for $10,000."
Yeah, she's like, "Oh yeah, I'll do it. You just gotta give me more money." And nothing a promoter or a booker wants to hear less than more money. You know what? I don't think the spot's necessary.
I can give you an extra bag of chips.
Yeah, exactly. It's good. It's good exposure.
We got water in the back. There's like alcohol.
We got a soda machine in the back. It takes multi-denominations coins.
I said they got water in the back. Even that's kind of up in the air sometimes.
There's a water fountain.
if you're at a high school.
Yeah, exactly. All right, brother. Thank you so much for being on here. I appreciate it. I really enjoyed it. Hope you did too. Please, though, put over where people can buy merch, where people can check out your stuff. If they're not familiar with you, what matches specifically they should look up, that kind of thing.
Oh, okay. Well, in order to plug myself, I have to look up my own social media crap. So for Twitter, it's _Kenny K. For Instagram, it's Kenny K5. And I think Facebook, you should just be able to search the Kenny K and it should pop up anywhere. As far as merch goes, I would say buy it from me at a merch table, but that doesn't look like it's going to happen anytime soon. So I would direct you to brainbustertees.com. They have a lot of the new stuff that I've been putting up. I've been putting up a lot of old stuff. They don't have this shirt up, and I think I'm just kind of keeping that exclusive for when I'm able to sell it again.
That's good. It gives people an incentive to see you in person.
Yeah, so this is my Sons of Anarchy, but I have a Breaking Bad style shirt there. I have a Baywatch style shirt there, just because, David Hasselhoff. And I have a Star Wars style shirt there as well. So that's the place to buy my t-shirts and merch. They have masks, hats, everything. So it's a really cool place and pretty affordable as far as pricing goes. And I don't get ripped off. So if you go there, I do appreciate it. I'm pretty specific on where I sell my stuff. So as far as matches go, my YouTube channel is the best way probably to find my matches. Unless I don't think there's any other places. Maybe Hoodslam Twitch would be the other place to find some of my best matches. My match with Mike Hayashi is on there. That's really good. There's a match with Chupacabra at Hoodslam. That's really good. I had a match with Douglas James at a National Pro Wrestling League. That's really good. I also had a match with Matt Cross that I really enjoyed at Best of the West in Santa Cruz.
I got to check that out. I figured that you and Matt Cross would be a very good.
That was fun. Yeah. He actually, that was a really fun match. That was a great conversation to have with him. That guy. Yeah. He's like, I just have the illusion of looking fast. I'm like, oh, cause I'm like, all right, let's do this. And he's like, how about we do the shoulder tackle and then I backflip and then we call it the day. I'm like, you know what? You might be right. And it's probably going to get the same reaction. So, and that's the kind of like just collaborative and there's other things, but yeah, that was a fun match, man. And that's one of my, that's one of my people. That's one of the people that I grew up watching that I wanted to wrestle. So it was really cool to be able to do that. I had a four-way, I think it was a four-way match. I believe it was four-way match at 3-2-1 Battle in Seattle with Super Crazy that was involved in there. That was really fun. And then another triple threat with Super Crazy and Steven Tresario at National Pro Wrestling League. That one was also pretty cool. Because anytime me and Steven are in a ring is really fun. There's another good match. If you look up from not Punk Slam. Punk Slam is too old. Petaluma, Phoenix Pro Wrestling. Phoenix Pro Wrestling, me versus Steven Tresario, a little bit earlier in the years. But yeah, go to my YouTube channel, The Kenny K. You should be able to search it. If you can't find that, The Kenny K Wrestling, that's probably the best way to search it on YouTube. And that should lead you to all the good matches. I think I have a section there for my favorite matches or best matches that you can probably peruse through.
I remember I was watching a bunch of Phoenix Pro stuff on YouTube. And I was so confused because I was like, wow, they got a lot of NorCal guys here. The whole time thinking it was Phoenix, Arizona.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I was like, wow, this is so weird. They book so many NorCal guys. This is weird. And I was like, oh, it's North Bay. Ah, shit. Okay.
Same place and same person that used to run SPW Punk Slam.
Okay.
If you remember that. And the same location, Phoenix Theater, yeah.
Okay.
It's like a little skate venue / like punk venue. Is awesome. It's like a really cool ass place. Yeah.
Awesome.
They have probably one of the best setups that I hear in the Bay, I think.
Oh, it looks great on the channel. I was like, wow, this is actually production wise, it looks really nice.
Yeah. And that's that. Yeah. I have some really good matches there. I do a lot of fun stuff there because they let me fly free sometimes.
All right, brother. Thank you for being on the podcast. I appreciate you.
Thank you, man. Have a good one.